Hello guys and welcome back. So today we're starring the infamous GTX 1050. The particular model I've got today is the GTX 1050 2GB version from Zotac. This here is one of my favourite cards in my collection, simply because it's so small, it's lightweight, and it is very capable. Oh, and don't forget to mention, it doesn't require any external power, so you can just throw this into any computer that has a PCIe lane, and you can game very, very well. Or at least in my opinion, for the price. So when this card was released in October 2016, it cost around $110, which translates to £82. For some reason, this information was quite hard to find on Google, because I didn't believe it. But when I saw it as $110, I was like, there's no way this card in 2016 wasn't $110. But that's only because my mind's foggy with the new graphics card prices, that I didn't believe it. I mean, this card now can sell on eBay for up to £200 new, and it blows my mind. And you're very lucky if you can find one of these for £130 on eBay used. So this particular version has a base clock of 1054 MHz, a memory clock of 1752 MHz. Like I said, it's the 2GB model, and it only uses 75 watts of power, even though most of the time it doesn't even get near to that. As mentioned before, this particular card doesn't require any external power, which is probably my favourite thing about this whole entire card. So without further ado, let's get right into the benchmarks. I'd like to mention the system I am using to test this card. So we've got a Ryzen 5 5600X, with 16GB of RAM, and of course the GTX 1050. If you'd like more details on the specification of my PC, then that'll be in the description below. You may be thinking, why would you pair a Ryzen 5 5600X with this computer? Well, I wouldn't expect that. To get the maximum performance from the GTX 1050, I'd recommend you use any 4th generation Intel i5, for example the 4460, the 4690K, basically anything from the 4th generations of i5 will be perfect for this card, and anything newer, faster, the better. Okay, so moving on into the numbers, we got an average FPS of 177, a 1% low of 123, and a 0.1% low of 112. Numbers here are absolutely great. We're playing this game maxed out, as you can see, with 8 times MSAA. It looks good, it plays good. If you are an FPS hunter and you want more FPS, drop this game to low, very low, and you'll still have a great time with better numbers. As you can see, with them 1% and 0.1% lows, this game ran absolutely flawlessly, and it was a great experience. So as this video progresses, we'll get into the harder to run titles, but for now, we'll start with the esports titles. Okay, so moving on to Valorant. As you can see by the numbers, this game performed amazingly. We're running at 1080p high settings with 2 times MSAA, anisotropic filtering. That sounds so weird. Anisotropic. Anyway, we're running at 16 times AF. That's what we'll call it from now on. One thing I will say about Nvidia cards is obviously the 1000 series is still optimized, as it still gets driver support. So I'll find that in these newer titles, the 1% lows and the 0.1% lows are great, especially after comparing some older AMD cards, which are running on the legacy drivers. And it is really nice to see, because, like I said, this was a budget card at the time. It still is quite a budget card, I suppose, but I think because of the ease of access and the capabilities of this card, the price is a little bit jumped up, simply because it still holds up. But like I mentioned, Valorant was a very fun experience. You could even put the MSA up a little bit and still hit that 144 refresh rate, or you can just play on all low settings and get probably like 250 FPS, probably more. You can test that for yourself. I'm just here to show you that you can get a nice balance of visuals and performance. Okay, so moving on to everyone's favourite, we've got Fortnite at 1080p competitive settings, and this card had absolutely no issues running this game whatsoever. So we've got an average FPS of 115, a 1% low of 69, and a 0.1% low of 59. So I would say the 1% low didn't make a difference to the game whatsoever. The game was very smooth, nothing to complain about. You could even bump some of the settings up if you was aiming more for 60, 70, 80 FPS. Personally, on games like Fortnite, I'm quite happy with anywhere over 90 to 100. So I'm just happy playing at competitive settings. Epic view distance so I can see people. Makes it much easier to see people anyway. The higher the settings, the harder it is to see because of foliage and higher detail, so to speak. But yeah, nothing to complain about Fortnite. You want to get into Fortnite? Listen, my suggestion is, if you're on a budget, buy yourself a pre-built, an old i5, Dell, Optiplex, get yourself a GTX 1050 and you'll be able to play Fortnite for probably about £200. So I recommend that 100%. Probably the best way to go right now. Like I said, runs absolutely perfectly. Right, okay, moving on to GTA 5. So just before I get into the numbers, I'd like to say I am conducting this test on GTA Online in quite a populated lobby, just to give you the worst case slash best case scenario, however you want to look at it. I'm running this game at very high settings with 2x MSAA, trying to target about 60 FPS, which this card did absolutely fine. Please note that on story mode or single player, this would have performed much better, probably around 70 FPS, maybe a bit higher, and that's the same for lower populated online sessions. So we got an average FPS of 61, a 1% low of 54, and a 0.1% low of 49. There is some settings I am using that you could just turn down and get a very consistent, 70 FPS, but 60 works perfectly fine for me in this game, so that's what I'm going to roll with. I mean, I find it amazing that this card, which is 6 years old, it was very low budget when it came out, requires no external power, and it does perform this well. Yes, Grand Theft Auto is an old game, but you think this game was released in 2015, right around the time of GTX 1050 release, and the 1050 was the slower performing card out of the 1000 series, and it still runs this game at very high settings. To me, that's great. That's great architecture, and they absolutely nailed it with this card. So yeah, very, very happy. You're going to have a very, very smooth and steady gameplay experience, as you can see. Okay, so moving on to another older game, we've got Fallout 4 at 1080p. We've got a medium to high mix. We've got the anti-aliasing option set to the highest, which in Fallout 4 is TAA. And as you can see, the game looks absolutely gorgeous, and we've got an average FPS of 73, a 1% low of 61, and a 0.1% low of 55. So like I've mentioned before, the GTX 1050 is such a stable card. I think it's simply down to the drivers still being updated. So that's why you see the average percentiles quite tightly close together. And that makes for a very smooth experience. You could even put some of the settings up a little bit and just target that 60. Personally, I'm happy with 70 and these visuals. The game played great and I'm really happy with this. So yeah, absolutely great. So moving on to the newest game on this list, we have got Forza Horizon 5, one of my favourite titles at the moment. So we're running this game with a high preset with 2x MSAA, and we've got a very nice and playable frame rate of 51, a 1% low of 44, and a 0.1% low of 37. So like I've mentioned in my previous benchmark videos, 51 FPS in this game is more than playable. However, if you do want to play at over 60, just turn the preset down to medium. You still have a nice balance of visuals and performance, but for me this was more than playable and I had a great experience. I highly recommend just playing at high preset. It really does surprise me that this 2GB GTX 1050 runs this game so well. Even though I was getting exceeding the VRAM usage, this 2GB card held up amazingly. I think at one point, on high settings I was using 3.5GB of VRAM, which I don't know how, it's impossible, but it was, and it was playing absolutely smoothly. So absolutely no faults with this game whatsoever. Moving on to what I would consider the hardest game to run, we've got Doom Eternal, running at 1080p just on the lowest preset, the lowest settings, with an average FPS of 61, a 1% low of 45, and a 0.1% low of 34. So one thing I'll say about this game, it is quite twitchy, it requires higher FPS. Personally for me, playing at 1080p and getting 61 FPS was fine. You could turn the resolution scale down, or you could just turn the resolution down itself, maybe to 900p or to 720p. I didn't test this myself because I was quite happy playing at 1080p, so maybe that's something for you guys to try and see if you prefer that. But like I said, it's quite a demanding game. It ran just fine to me, and you would have a good experience playing this game. So overall, I really do recommend it. Right, so just ending this video off, moving on to the conclusion. We'll keep it nice and short. So overall, I don't have one bad thing to say about this card. It performs very well. It requires no external power. It literally could just be thrown into any old workstation, namely a Dell Optiplex. Put one of these in and you will have a gaming experience. Just make sure it's got a 4th gen i5, and like I said, you will have a great experience. The only two negatives I can say about this graphics card, which actually applies to every graphics card I buy and use, is that the card itself is used. That's fair enough. Not everyone likes to get a used card. You can pay that very high price point for a new one if you'd like to, but at that point I wouldn't recommend it, as they do go up for £180. I mean, even new in 2016, this card only costs £100. So, and like I said, with anything used, you can have issues. So I would recommend making sure it works when you buy it, or buy it off eBay or somewhere that offers a warranty so at least you can return it. In my opinion, you'll have some of the best 1080p gaming experiences for the price. Anyway, if you can especially get it at the price I got it, around £50, it's almost unbeaten, this card. So yeah, we're just going to end it short and sweet. Highly recommend this card if you're looking to buy one. Definitely at the right price. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Take care and goodbye.